Club de Futbol America SADCV, popularly known as Club America, America de Mexico or simply America, was founded on October 12, 1916 and currently plays in the Liga MX, first division of Mexican football. In the beginning in the 20th century, football began to spread throughout the world. From Spain and England, it gained strength to become the fashionable sport in private schools in our country. In the year 1916, in January, football was already played with great consistency and intensity. Rafael Garza Gutierrez, nicknamed Record and German Eneas Cortina, were the ones who had the mission of creating the team with the best players from Colegio Mascarones. Calixta Cortina, known as Aunt Calida, lent her house to German her nephew to hold the first meeting of the team, first called Record. The players on this team were quite talented, but they did not have uniforms and only had a ball to do their training. This was not going to stop them, so they tried to merge with La Perpetua, who had very good quality balls, and of course, fabric for the uniforms. On October 12, 1916, was when they officially achieved the merger. This happened in La Condesa, where everyone proposed the name for the team. On the occasion of the commemoration of the arrival of Christopher Columbus to the American continent, the name chosen was America. A proposal for a shield was also made, which had a drawing of the continent and the initials C for Club and A for America. In addition, the blue-cream colors, which to date have represented the club, were defined. Florencio Dominguez Cortina served as president of the team. He was in charge of dividing it into two groups. Those over 15 years old, with the mission of seeking a place in the league tournament, were left in charge. Those under 15 years old were in charge of Record. The team managed to win all the interscholastic tournaments in which it participated, which motivated the board a lot, which requested to join the Mexican Amateur Football Association League in 1917. In July, as a requirement for entry, they had to pass the test by playing 3 games, and so it was. They won against Germania FV and Club Mexico and drew against Spain. That same year, they played and lost their first official match, against JV Nair Club. In November they beat Deportivo Español 2-0, both goals were from Abel Flores Reyes. Its beginnings after finishing last in the league in the 1917-1918 season, they had to further strengthen the team with players from schools with which they previously competed. The club changed to a more peaceful and inclusive name to avoid problems between current and new players. With the name of Club Central Union, they registered for the Friendship Cup in 1918. With great performances, they won this tournament, which was the first, unofficial, in their history. In 1920, after some conflicts, the Union was renamed Club America again. This season, they won the Vizcaya Cup friendly trophy against Spain. Instead of participating in the Mexican League, they chose to do so in the National League, organized by España, Tigres and España de Veracruz. This decision lasted until 1922, however. In the 1922-1923 season the FMF First Force Championship was formed, which unified the Mexican and National Leagues. America beat Spain 2-0 on October 22, 1922, in the opening match of this championship. At the end of this year, the Mexican ambassador in Guatemala invited the Cremas to play 3 friendlies against Comunicaciones, recognized as the national team of that country. In Guatemala, 2 were won by America and the remaining by Comunicaciones. In 1923, the Guatemalan team now played 3 friendlies, on Mexican soil, against the Mexican national team, made up of players from America, Atlanta and Uruguay Marina. America and Spain were tied for first place in the 1923-1924 tournament, so they played, and lost, a tiebreaker match. Thus, Spain kept the title. For titles in the row, America became champions and was undefeated in the 1924-1925 season, with 10 victories and only 2 defeats. As if that were not enough, they scored 22 goals and conceded 4. Alfredo Garcia Bisni was scoring champion. The Cremas team was able to defend their championship a year later, winning 9 games out of 12 played in total. In 1925, the Spanish teams wanted to leave the league. They were upset because a Mexican team, America, became champion a year earlier. Weeks later, they returned to play the season. Asturias and America were tied for first place, so the league decided to define the winner by playing 3 games. America and Asturias were victorious in the first and second games, respectively. The third would be won by the Mexican team to obtain their second title. The 1926 to 1927 tournament arrived and the team was still on a winning plan, so much so that they achieved the biggest win in their history by beating Romania FV 10-0. On the last day, they beat Aurora and the third championship arrived. The league also awarded them the Challenger Cup, in recognition for winning 3 titles in a row. In 1927, America had new players to continue accumulating titles. The highlight of this season was the game they tied against Asturias, 5-5. The 5 American goals were from Ernesto Soto, who became the first player to score 5 goals in the same game in the club's history. At the end of this tournament, they took their 4th consecutive title and it seemed that no one would stop them, until the following season when Mart interrupted their winning streak. The 30s in this decade, several of the previous players were beginning to retire. Juan Didios Bojorquez was named president of the team, and in the end, the person who would help them a lot with the money issue. For example, he put 10 and 100 peso shares for sale. In addition, he had in mind to build a stadium with capacity for 30,000 people on land near the National Stadium, but the project never came to fruition. The league, 1930 to 1931, it was suspended, but a year later it returned under the name of the Major League. The team little by little was losing prominence, since it could not be champion or be in the first places. America was runner-up in the 1934 to 1935 and 1935 to 1936 tournaments, won by Necaxa. The only title they won in the decade was the Mexico Cup, in 1937 to 1938. The team played matches against other international teams, managing to beat some such as Athletic Club 2-1 in 1935 and Barca 2-0 in 1936. In 1936, a group of players asked the managers to have a collective bargaining contract for 2 years, receive a monthly salary to meet the needs of the players and their families, be registered with the profession of footballers before the Treasury and Labor Societies, and the creation of the Club America Professional Footballers Union. These requests were not accepted, although it would be the first attempt to change the rights of Mexican soccer players. Drought and negative marks America did not win as it had been used to doing for a long time. From 1940 to the mid-50s, they established unfavorable numbers, for example, 101 goals conceded in 1945, 6 consecutive defeats, 15 consecutive games without winning and their worst win 2-9 versus Atlas in 1946. The team was not having a good time, as it was on the verge of being relegated between 1951 and 1953, but was saved. As if that were not enough, they were defeated twice, 0-1 in their first official match against Chivas in the Mexico Cup and 1-3 in the first Clásico de Clásicos in the league. The only good achievement of these years was reaching the cup final, and losing it against Puebla 4-6 in 1945. Two-time Mexico Cup champions America's bad years were beginning to be forgotten, as the team was led by Octavio Dial, who had played as a forward in the beginning. Outstanding personalities of the time joined, such as Pedro Noguera, Eduardo González Palmer, Emilio Faisal, Norberto Icano and Hector Ferrari. In the 1953-1954 season, America successfully played the group stage of the Mexico Cup. They only lost 1 game, while they tied 2 and won 3. That allowed them to access the semifinals, which they won against Atlante and gave them access to the final, against Chivas. Both teams were still tied without goals in regulation time. In extra time they tied at 1. The final was decided on penalties. Each team selected a player to execute 3 shots. America chose Emilio Faisal and Chivas chose Juan Jackso, shooters. America's goalkeeper Camacho had been sent off, so Eduardo González had to fulfill that role, and saved a penalty from the Guadalajara team. Faisal scored his 3 penalties and America was crowned. In the following cup season, the final was again against Guadalajara, after America had eliminated Aro and Atlante. The goal from José Lamadrid would be definitive to give the title to the Crema team, champion again. America was on the verge of going bankrupt, but in 1956, it was bought by Isaac Besudo, owner of Joritos, who sponsored several soccer events and thus caused the team to receive greater attention. A new owner arrived, and 3 more titles Emilio Azcárraga himself son of the owner of Telesistema Mexicano, today Televisa, bought the team in July 1959. There were several changes, such as the hiring of Guillermo Canedo in 1961 to serve as president. At that time, the club received the nickname Canarios due to the colors of the uniform and logo thanks to its owners. Things began to change. Although they were not yet champions again, they fought to the maximum between 1959 and 1962. Figures such as Alfonso Portugal, Walter Armeno and Francisco Moasier were part of the squad at that time. There were two cup tournaments in the 1962-1963 season, the original Mexico Cup and the Adolfo Lopez Mateos Cup. With an outstanding performance, America, directed by Nacho Trellis, was crowned champion. 2 years later, with Scopolit as coach, they were champions of the 1964-1965 Mexico Cup by beating Toluca, Zacatepec and UNAM in the group stage, Cruz Azul 3-2 in the semifinal and Morelia 4-0 in the final. The 1965-1966 league was also successful for America, as they won the championship on the last day already with Roberto Scaroni as coach against Veracruz, with a 2-0. 18 wins, 6 draws and 6 losses were the team's numbers in this great tournament. Another notable event in American history is the inauguration of the Azteca Stadium. On May 29, 1966, they played the opening match against Torreño and tied by 2 goals. Arlindo dos Santos scored the first goal in the history of the Alonso. International presence and local prominence in the 70s. The format of the league changed starting with the 1970-1971 season, as the 18 teams were divided into 2 groups. They played all against all, and after the last day, the leaders of both groups faced each other in the final round trip. The Cremas started weakly and with uncertainty, but managed to lead their group under the direction of Jose Antonio Roca, to face and beat Toluca in the first final in the history of this new format. The first leg ended tied without goals, while the A won the second leg 2-0. America lost the final of the following tournament 1-4 against Cruz Azul, influenced by goalkeeper Miguel Marin, who had a good performance. In the 1973-1974 season, America did not agree to play in the league final. That same year, they took revenge by winning the cup title, precisely against Cruz Azul, with a 2-1 in the second leg and a 3-2 overall. The excitement was not that much, since they did not reach the final phase of the league in 1974-1975 either, but in an unexpected twist, they were champions of the 1975-1976 league tournament without conceding the goal in the Libula. Also in that season, A won the Champion of Champions against Tigres. The Milwaukee team participated in the 1977 CONCACAF Champions Cup. It was the first time in its history. They were unable to play their first match, since the New York Inter Giuliana, the team they would play against, withdrew from the competition and led to them qualifying for the final round. Several clubs left the competition in the same way. The final of the tournament was played in Suriname against SV Robin Hood. America won the first leg and the second leg was tied at 1 goal. Thus, the American team obtained its first CONCACAF title. The champion of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, America, played 3 games against the champion of the Copa Libertadores, Boca Juniors, to define the champion of the 1978 Inter-American Cup. Boca won 3-0 in Buenos Aires and America won 2-0 in CDMX. The third game at the request of the Argentines was also played at the Azteca, where America won 2-1, thus obtaining one more title in its history. The Golden Decade in 1980. After not winning the league between 1977 and 1981, Canedo left the presidency of the team and Emilio Diaz Barroso arrived, who sought to revolutionize the team and make it the best in Mexican soccer. The Eagles of America were born as such in September 1981, thus keeping that nickname. The dissemination with the media made the team have even more impact, which would ultimately generate better results than the previous ones. In 1981-1982, they finished second in the league behind Atlante. They were eliminated by Tigres in the semifinals. The season later, the team had one of the best performances, winning 26 games, drawing 9 and losing 3, out of 38 total. They scored 69 goals and received 27, making them the best offensive and defensive team in the championship, and they achieved 28 consecutive games without being defeated. At home, They beat Atletico Potosino 6-0 in the quarterfinals. In the first leg of the semifinals, they beat Chivas 2-1 in Jalisco. A hot game was expected in the second leg, and that was the case from the first 3 minutes. Cristobal Ortega received an elbow from Rivas and was injured. At minute 12, coach Alberto Girl of Guadalajara was sent off. Norberto Doubts from America hit Eduardo Cisneros at 25 and was also sent off. Cardenas from Chivas hit an American player, and yes, he also received the red card. The Jalisco goals were present on the scoreboard in minutes 44, 45 and 88. Roberto Gomez Junco raised 3 fingers in mockery in front of the American bench. This gesture did not go down well at all, and the fight broke out for more than 20 minutes, including players, coaching staff, managers and even fans. The referee whistled the end of the game early, but the fight continued for 5 more minutes. Chivas lost the final against Puebla due to having 7 players sent off. In the 1983-1984 season, America was league champion again. This time with a special touch, since it was against Guadalajara. This was the first classic of classics played in a final. The first leg was 2-2 and the second leg was 3-1. The Eagles achieved the 2-time championship surprisingly, as they had poor results at the beginning of the campaign. They finished in 4th place in the overall table, but it was not an impediment to beating Chivas and Atlas in the quarterfinals and semifinals, respectively. The final was against Pumas. The first leg at the Azteca ended tied at 1 goal, while the second leg was tied without goals. In this match, the tragedy of Tunnel 29 of the University Olympic Stadium occurred, as the building was overcrowded and the event was disorganized. 8 people died and many were injured. Returning to the sports topic, since both matches had been tied, a third match was played at a neutral venue, Corregidor de Querétaro. America controversially won 3-1 and took the championship. The PRO the 85 championship took place in mid-1985. It was characterized by being played without national teams which were concentrated for the World Cup. The total 20 teams were divided into 4 groups. America was the leader of its group, which included Guadalajara, Angeles de Puebla, Irapuato and Tigres, and went to the quarterfinals against UDG, winning 3-1 on aggregate. The semifinal was against Atlante and they also won, with a result of 5-3. The final was against Tampico Madero, who won 4-1 in the first leg. The result seemed definitive, but the Cream team won 3-0 in the second leg, thus causing extra time. Eduardo Bacas scored in the 128th minute and thus made it 4-0, 5-2 for overall for America to be champions once again. America won 3 simultaneous titles in the 1987-1988 season, the CONCACAF Champions Cup against Defense Force 3-1 overall, the league against Pumas in the final 5-1 overall, and the champion of champions against Puebla, which won the Mexico Cup. The overall result was 3-2. The Aguilas did not stop winning, as they were crowned against Cruz Azul in the 1988-1989 league. They won the first leg 3-2 and the second leg was tied at 2 goals. They also won the champion of champions, this time against Toluca. League drought in 1990. Some players retired, others lowered their level. The club stopped hiring foreigners and did not debut so many youth players. This and some factors caused America to stop being the protagonist in the league. However, he was still competing to achieve another championship. They reached the final of the 1990-1991 season against Pumas and won the first leg 3-2 at the Azteca. The second leg was 1-0 in favor of UNAM, so this team won thanks to the away goals. In this same year, America won the CONCACAF Champions Cup against FC Pinar del Rio, with an aggregate score of 8-2, thus obtaining their third Confederation title and later the Inter-American Cup, now against Olimpia. One of the best signings of the time was that of the legendary Hugo Sanchez, who returned from Madrid to play for the Cremas. His first title as an American was a CONCACAF Champions Cup in 1992. They still did not win the league, since they could not do so in 1991-1992, nor in 1992-1993, nor in 1993-1994. To try to get rid of poor results, they hired Leo Ben-Hacker as their coach. His first decision was to hire the Zambian Kalusha Bouillon and the Cameroonian Francois Mambiak. The hiring of Ben-Hacker paid off. as the American style of play changed drastically to a much better one. One of the most remembered matches of the 1994-1995 season was against Atletico Morelia, as they started losing 2-0 and came back in the match, so that the final result was 7-3. Another of the best matches was America 8-1 Correcaminos U80. The comebacks were also present in the Classic of Classics, because after losing 3-2, they turned the result around to win 4-3 definitively. Despite these good results, the coach was separated from the team in April 1995, a decision made by the board. The reason for his dismissal was not known until 2010. Cuauhtémoc Blanco invited Leo to an interview, where the coach said that Diaz Barroso, president of the club, ordered him not to field Joaquin del Olmo. However, he did it. The short tournaments began with winter 1996, but America did not do well at all. La Volpe was the coach on this occasion. He was fired after losing 5-0 against Chivas in Jalisco. Carlos de los Cobos came in to direct, who could not save the season either, thus breaking the streak of 16 consecutive league matches. Jorge Solari managed the Aguilas in the summer of '97. They finished as leaders of the competition, but Atletico Morelia eliminated them in the quarterfinals. The Mexican teams debuted in the Copa Libertadores in 1998. America beat Chivas 1-0 at the Jalisco Stadium with a goal from Garcia Aspe. The second match, also against Chivas, was 1-0 at Azteca. America passed as one of the best third parties, but was eliminated by River Plate. The 2000s, the new century. Despite not being able to win it, the 2000 Copa Libertadores was one of the best tournaments played in the team's history. With Alfredo Tina in the technical direction, they managed to go very far. They beat America de Cali with a great performance by Cuauhtémoc. They beat Bolívar 4-1 in the quarterfinals and fought until the end against Boca Juniors, who eliminated them from the semifinal on penalties. In 2001 they beat DC United in the only edition of the CONCACAF Giants Cup, after having beaten Municipal and Saprissa. Meanwhile, they could not be league champions despite having achieved the lead. It was not until summer 2002, when they emerged champions against Necaxa. It was his first title after 13 years. The 2002 Apertura was characterized by the fact that Manuel Lapuente led America and had to stop doing so due to health problems, which led to Mario Carrillo's interim appointment. At the end of this tournament, they were leaders with 13 games won, 4 draws and only 2 losses. However, Santos Laguna eliminated them. 6 tournaments later, they were champions of the 2005 Clausura with Mario Carrillo as coach. In 2006, they debuted in the FIFA Club World Cup, in which they only won their match against Jeonbuk Hyundai Motors, losing third place against Al Ahly of Egypt. The Clausura 2008 was their worst tournament, as they failed to win 11 times in a row, a fact that caused them to finish in 18th place overall. America also did not manage to enter the league in the 2009 Apertura or the 2009 Clausura. They managed to do it in the 2009 Apertura, but were eliminated against Monterrey in the quarterfinals. 2010s to present, America did not win the championship in the 2010 Bicentennial Tournament, which was notable mainly for the loss of Salvador Cabanas, thanks to being shot in the head and having a wound. The Apertura 2010 was not the best either, as Santos eliminated them in the semifinal. The Apertura 2011 was similar to the Clausura 2008, as the team finished second to last in the table. They presented Ricardo Pérez as president and Miguel Joe Herrera as coach. America was the leader of its group in the 2013 Mexico Clausura Cup, but Cruz Azul eliminated them on penalties in the semifinals, to later become champions. Meanwhile, the Eagles finished second in the league, beating Pumas and Monterrey to reach the final, precisely against the Machine, who won the first leg 1-0. Jesús Molina was sent off 13 minutes into the second leg final, which seemed like a clear disadvantage, but it was not. Teofilo Gutierrez scored for Cruz Azul to make the aggregate 2-0. In the final minutes, Equivaldo Mosquera scored one of the 2 goals the team needed. Goalkeeper Moises Munoz tied the game on the corner kick, helped by a deflection from Alejandro Castor. The penalty shootout arrived and America was finally crowned thanks to the penalty scored by Miguel León. America was champion again in the 2014 Apertura with Antonio Mohamed as its new coach, after Herrera was announced as strategist of the national team. the Aguilas obtained the lead, and later, they won the final aggregate score 3-1 against the Tigres. Turco Mohamed left America and was replaced by Gustavo Matatsis. In 2015, America had a very good performance in the CONCACAF Champions League. One of their most notable results was the 10-1 win against Bayamon, which, added to 2 victories against Bayamon and Comunicaciones and a draw against Comunicaciones, gave them the lead in Group 8 to advance to the next phase. They easily beat Saprissa 5-0 on aggregate in the quarterfinals. They later lost the first leg of the semifinals 3-0 against Herediano, but won 6-0 in the second leg. AIM suffered and beat Montreal Impact in the final, which gave them a place in the Club World Cup, where they finished 5th. In the league, Pachuca eliminated them in the quarterfinals. The centenary of the Aguilas arrived in 2016. They won the CONCACAF Champions League again against Tigres, qualifying for the Club World Cup. The international match of his centenary was played and lost 2-0 against Real Madrid. Speaking about the Liga MX, with Ricardo Lavolpe in the technical direction, they could not win it this time. They played the final against Tigres in a very close match, which would finally get out of hand in the penalty shootout. The Nuevo Leon team scored 3 penalties, while the Aguilas failed to score any. 2017 was not a good year for America football-wise, as they did not manage to obtain any titles. Tijuana eliminated them in the round of 16 of the Copa MX. By not qualifying for the league in the Clausura 2017, the streak of 10 consecutive leagues, established in the Apertura 2011, was broken. Added to that, Ricardo Peláez stopped being president of the team. The poor results led to the departure of Ricardo Lavolpe and the return of Miguel Ferreira. Some problems such as injuries, poor planning and loss of play, they tried to be resolved in the Clausura 2018, the tournament in which America was eliminated in the semifinals against Santos. The CONCACAF Champions League was not as expected either, as Toronto FC eliminated them in the semifinals with a 4-2 aggregate score. The Apertura 2018 restored hope to the Azul Crema fans, as they achieved sub-leadership. In the league, they beat Toluca with a 5-4 aggregate score. The semifinal against Pumas continues to be well remembered, since after a series of errors by the university goalkeeper and a great American offensive, they obtained the victory with a 7-2 aggregate, which took them to the final against Cruz Azul. Both teams were the best that year and the final promised a lot. Surprisingly, the first leg ended in a 0-0 draw. The return was somewhat close, until at 50, Edson Alvarez took advantage of a defensive oversight and scored from outside the area. Already in the final minutes, the same player scored the second and final goal, to give the Aguilas their 13th league championship. In 2019, they signed Nico Castillo and Nico Benedetti to increase their squad. In the MX Cup, they eliminated Pachuca in the round of 16, Chivas in the quarterfinals and Ecolos in the semifinals. They won the final against Juarez, thus ending the cup drought of more than 45 years. They also won the 2018-2019 Champion of Champions against Tigres. In a penalty shootout, goalkeeper Agustin Marquesan scored the final goal in sudden death. The Apertura 2019 was a difficult tournament for the Azul Crema team, as there were several injuries, and Edson Alvarez, Matias Uribe and Agustin Marquesan emigrated to Europe. The hires that year were Guillermo Ochoa, Giovanni dos Santos and Federico Inez. The league was not so bad, since they beat Tigres and Morelia. However, they lost the final against Rayados on penalties. That game was the last for Guido Rodriguez, who left for Betis. The Clausura 2020 was a normal tournament for America. Due to the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, it was suspended on match day 10, in which those led by Herrera stayed in 4th place. The CONCACAF Champions was also left unfinished. America beat Comunicaciones on penalties in the round of 16, and won the first leg at the Azteca 3-0 against Atlanta United. The return was also postponed due to COVID-19.